Okay, we have a ranking video today on this band, Exodus. Now, this band needs no introduction. One of my favorite bands over pretty much the last several years. I've constantly listened to them on a almost day-to-day basis in some way, shape, or form. Now, I've only got 3 physical records to actually show you guys. And with that, let's get into it. So, number 10, 92's Force of Habits. Force of Habit. Now, Battery Studios in London, produced by Chris Tsangarides. Chris has done some amazing records, Painkiller being one of them. And production is bad, the guitar tone is bad, Zetro sounds really bad vocally, and overall it's one of those records where I put it on and I listen to the first, I get about a quarter through the first track and I'm like, please tell me this is just the first record. Now I understand this was also done in 1992, I get that, but even back then there were some really good records being made and produced. So I skipped through a couple tracks, instantly took it out of my friggin' library on my Apple Music, and I was just like, no. I'm not suffering through that. I don't think so. It's very bad. Now, and there's no highlights to talk about because there's nothing good on that record. It's way too long. It's the record that Gary said he didn't write for himself. He wrote for what the label, he figured the label wanted to hear, which was Capitol. And he just didn't like it. And it's that record that people are like, gotta talk about it, but we don't like to because it's Force of Habit. Now, will I eventually add it to my discography? Yeah, because if I want to actually complete the damn thing, I'm gonna have to get it. Although it's very hard to find. So I'm going to move on to number 9 and number 8 at the same time because it's pretty much, so number 9 is 2010's Exhibit B, The Human Condition. And number 8 is this record, I just had it, here we go, is the Atrocity Exhibit, Exhibit A. Now, both of these records are what I would classify as Exodus's, it would be the band's Load and Reload, but 1,000 times darker, 1,000 times heavier, and 1,000 times faster. But it's at that period where they're like, Rob Dukes comes into the band, they get, there was a lot of lineup changes that happened, but of course, it's still Exodus. I love both the records, but honestly, the thing that, like I said, it's obviously load and reload. It's that whole load and reload thing with Exhibit A and Exhibit B. The songs are fucking killer, but they don't rank as high as some of the other records. Now, Andy Sneap's production on these records are absolutely fabulous, absolutely fabulous. Songs like from Exhibit B, The Ballad of Leonard Charles, Downfall, Beyond the Pale, Burn Hollywood Burn. And on Exhibit A, you have, like Riot Act, Children of a Worthless God, Iconoclasm. So there's a lot more darker lyrical content in this. And of course, it's really cool because with Rob singing it, it sounds like really, really extreme and intense, which makes the records great. But like I said, they just don't rate near as high as, some of the others. Now, that being said, that does not mean I don't like Dukes. I love Dukes. I love Dukes with a passion, vocally. Now, number 7 is Pleasures of the Flesh. Now, this came out in 1987. It's the cassette that I held up. Okay, and as you guys can see, it's a lot harder. There we go. It's a lot harder with the light back there and so on and so forth. I think what I'll do maybe in my next few videos, I'll pull that light down. Now, that sophomore release, the very first one with Zetro, Steve Zetro Souza. Produced by the band, Mark Senesac. Mark Whitaker did the drums, and it's just good old classic Exodus. Very thrashy, deranged. The title track, of course, and Chemical they're my highlighted tunes here. They're just absolutely top notch as far as I'm concerned. Moving on to number 6. From here to number 1 is where it gets really, really hard. Really hard. This is 2005's Shovel-Headed Kill Machine. This is the very first with Rob Dukes, and it's my favorite out of all the OG stuff or studio stuff with Rob. And obviously, Let There Be Blood is not included in that because it's a re-recorded version. Although one of my biggest gripes with this record is Gary's guitar tone, or the guitar tone as a whole. It's really, really fuzzy, and it doesn't sound good at all. That does not mean the record's bad. It was done at Trident Studios with Andy Sneap as a mix master genius, and it was produced by Gary. They're just a monster record. Even though the title track, or even though the name of the Shovel-Headed Kill Machine is a bit weird, but hey, what do I know? It's Exodus, for Christ's sake. They can title it however the way they want to. Highlighted tracks on this for me, Death Amphetamine is just a monster of a track, and one of the hardest songs that Rob said it was to sing, because vocally everything went with the guitar. So if you were off even by a half a vocal, you threw it all off, and you struggled to get back. So it took about 100 shows for Rob to get used to singing it, but once they got it down, they said it was awesome. And of course, Altered Boy and 44 Magnum Opus are killer tracks on this record. Absolutely amazing. I can't wait to get that one too. So my top 5. You're probably thinking, okay, there's a lot of Steve here, and there's only one Paul. Where are they stacking up? Number 5, 1990's Impact is Imminent. Produced by the H-Team, which is Gary Holt and Rick Hunolt. This was a real thrasher piece, and I have to state right off the bat, I slag the fuck out of this record. In my introduction to the band, and why? Well, because I was enamored with the vocalist on this record, Rob Dukes. I was a Rob guy right off the bat. I thought friggin' Steve was whiny, and I didn't get the vocals. And I was just like, why? What's the deal? And I'll get to that momentarily. Now that I completely am on board with Zetro, Lunatic Parade, AWOL, the title track Impact is Imminent, Within the Walls of Chaos, Heads They Win, they're just the highlights of this fucking underrated thrasher piece, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's no, there's one right after this that actually is, but I'll get to that part with Zetro. But this was just a fantastic record. I can't wait to get this on CD or even vinyl if I can find that. May not be able to. Okay, number 4, 89's Fabulous Disaster. Now, this doesn't, people can sit here and go on and on and on and say, oh, you have that ranked way too friggin' low. No, it's top 5. But the rest of them, you're going to be like, wait a minute. Produced by the H-Team again, regarded as one of the classic records in the band's discography as a whole. Production was good. Toxic Waltz is a great track. The last act of Defiance, also brilliant. The title track itself. Verbal Razors was good. Overdose, which is an AC/DC cover. Now, some of you guys must be thinking, oh, he must love that. It's not that I don't love it. I like it, but I understand his vocals. Now is where I understand it. I'm like, okay, so he's a Bon Scott fan. but he sounds like Bon, just even more pissed off than he normally is, which is good, which is fine. So now that I completely understand it, but the War Lowrider cover, fuck are you guys doing? I'm sure that was just some goofy song and they just wanted to put it out just to see what people would say. Well, it's not that good at all. But that's besides the point. And the other tracks, as I mentioned, are they're really solid. So hey, yeah, I mean, that's the part I do like about the record. Number 3, 1985's Bonded by Blood. So there could be people in the comments below or that are gonna message me or whatever and be like, "Why is Bonded by Blood not the top record?" It's not the top record because it's not. So it is an iconic, ultimate classic record. It's the only record to feature Paul Bailoff on vocals. He was fired due to alcohol, substance abuse, and even Gary has said a few times in, interviews that he was struggling to get the vocals to go with the music. He was trying to, he couldn't get it the way that they wanted it to. So in comes Zetro. Strike of the Beast, Lesson in Violence, Bonded by Blood itself, Piranha. The whole record is a fantastic record. Vocally, I wasn't a big Paul fan. I respect Paul. Paul was an absolute fucking animal live. That part I liked. Because people are going to be like, well, you just don't respect him. You just think he's terrible. No, I don't think he's terrible. I just never liked his vocal delivery. But I get it because with this specific record, when it was released as the debut, it worked. There's a reason why he got, there's a reason why he was only ever on one record. Outside of the live record. But the live record's not being talked about here. So that's that. Now you're probably all going, okay, well, there's 2 records left. Really? You're going to put these up here? I'm doing it. Number 2, 2004's Temple of the Damned. Now, this is the last record with Zetro for a while, because when Dukes comes in for 10 years. Now, I recently watched the 2.5 hour video between Zetro and Dukes, and I've been just clamoring to get to watch this, and I've watched it a few times already. And the thing is I was really, I knew Gary and Zetro didn't like each other for a while, but what it was is that Zetro was a full-time carpenter in the union, and he would work for a month or two, and then he would have to go away for 6 weeks, and then he would come back, and it was a thing where he had a wife, 3 kids, he had to take care of all of that stuff. And he just, as Steve has always said, that he did it very greasy. Like, he's like, I did them raw, I did them dirty kind of thing. He's like, I should have spent more time instead of just dropping it on like a couple days before a tour, basically. And so what happened was, that being said, because I think they were supposed, they were supposed to go to Mexico. And so that's when it was sort of this big issue between the whole lot of them. Now, there was a massive gap between Force of Habit and this. It was like 12 years. So obviously they were doing some touring and all that stuff. And, there was a big, there was Gary they didn't do anything, I guess, for quite a while after the Force of Habit stuff. Now, this record here was produced by Andy Sneap, and this is the record where I really feel that Zetro comes into his vocals. As I said, he's Bon Scott's twin, but 1,000 times more pissed off. This record is the last to feature Rick Hunolt for now, because a lot of people probably know that he's going to be on the new record doing a guest solo. And of course, it's still going to be Gary and Lee doing their thing. Now, this record is killer. Probably two of the, well, I mean, other than the title track, because they tend to put out a title track that every record. That's probably why they titled it that, because the songs are killer. War Is My Shepherd, unreal. Blacklist, fuck yes. Absolute stunners on this underrated thrash record. If you haven't heard it yet, you're going to need to go listen to it, legitimately. And now, number one, you're probably going, okay. Some people in the VC probably are watching this going, yeah, okay, we know this because he's mentioned it several times that it's one of his best favorite records. 2014's Blood In, Blood Out. The cover, like everything from the cover to just the songs themselves, the lineup, Zetro's back, and I mentioned this several times before, like, I didn't like this record because it wasn't Rob. And then once I had a chance to sit down with with some friends of mine and realize that Steve is the guy for this band, there's not anybody else that's going to do it better. Yes, Paul was the main, he was the first guy, but he's literally the dude that can do this the best. There's no one else that's going to sing any better for Exodus than Steve Zetro Souza. From Black 13 to the title track, which absolutely smokes. I mean, absolutely smokes. Collateral Damage, Salt the Wound, which I hated at the first because I didn't really like it. I didn't understand it. But it's one of my faves. Body Harvest. How many times do I have to explain to people how good Body Harvest is? How many times do I have to explain this? BTK, Wrapped in the Arms of Rage, My Last Nerve, Numb, Honor Killings, and Food for the Worms. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. Just an absolute stunner of a record. And production notes. Pretty sure this was done, I think this was actually produced, I think it was more produced by Jack Gibson, and it was, of course, the drums were done by Andy, and Gary, I believe, had a good hand in the production on that as well. Let's see here. Yeah, and Andy did the mixing, mastering. He did the drums for sure, because when they work with Andy on the drums, it's just it's really hard for it to ever sound bad. Now, for me, like I said, this is going to remain number one until we hear, the next one. And a lot of people would rank that a lot lower. I know a lot of people have ranked it lower. But time and time again, when I want to listen to Exodus, it's usually going to be that, Temple of the Damned. And Temple is going to get a lot of plays out of me lately, or over the next little while, and Let There Be Blood, because when Rob Dukes redid Bonded by Blood, a lot of people hated it because they're like, oh, how could they disgrace that record? It's like, well, Gary wanted to do it that way because, the production wasn't that good, so they wanted to have it sound better. And they asked Zetro for the longest time. They wanted him to redo it, which it would have sounded pretty good, but regardless, it just sounds really good. And of course, this year, in June, I think June 6th, we're going to get Persona Non Grata, and Gary has stated several times in interviews, especially recently with Ted Aguilar from Death Angel, that this is the most ferocious, heaviest, and the most brutal Exodus record to date. That's going to be hard to beat, because the discography is pretty fucking heavy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you see something in here that you don't like, please be sure to leave a comment down below. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you would have ranked it as. Why not? Hey, let's just have some fun. And if you're surprised by the top two, well, you know what? This is my list, of course. But at the end of the day, those records kill. Thanks, guys. Keep it thrashy, keep it heavy, and I'll see you again soon.